We'll begin as usual with Heart Sutra in English on page 2. Thus I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in samadhi and many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas and natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are born and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factor, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on until no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 kinds relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfectly enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisattva. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva Mahasattva should train the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara that he is spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you are taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One has said this, the Venerable Shariputra and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as the living in the skies, humans, and souls, and dharmas, rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One.
Madang ho jason jampel yala jatselo Angelo ro jedi general nita nandang ratsel way Jenye dungu jesin sekje nike tukale pansen Kanda sive zonra mare monton dunya kisave tozo kunma kuchi tase yama tuju yangden son Chudra chedo nyamo nyelong leje charo rose ching Mare mesa dunya yuko chinye jete Saju tasa yunten dozo jese tu Chu Zhuan Chu Dan Chu Ni Gen Shui Tao Le Me Se Cha Be Yang Ba Du Om Arapasana Di Om Arapasana Di Om Arapasana Di Che Yi Kira Vu Se Yi Da Le Di Mo Ba Se Ne Ga Dan De Je Xiong Lo To Ba Yi Lo Zhu Bo Be Na Ma Se Du So
Continue with the short mandala offering on page 16.
Sa Ji Lu Ge Xin Tok Tram Re Ra Plin Che Yi Te Ge Ma Ge San Ye Xin Lu Mi Te Wu Wa Ye Chok Ko Nam Pa Jin La Ju Ara Sho So Ma Dang Ba Jin Nam Ki Chu Lu Ka Ma Jin De 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 Ne Chi Dra Tsam Be Du Je Ze Ma La San Ye Chu Ye Cha Ba Abdu So Guru Ratna Mandala
Continue with the refuge prayer on page 22.
Sa Ye Pu Lo Mu Cho Na Ma Chan Chu Ba Du Da Ni Gyap Sa Chi Da Gi Chi Ye Ji Pe So Nam Ki Tro La Pen Che San Ye Tu Para Sho San Ye Chu Dan So Ye Cho Na Ma Chan Chu Ba Du Da Ni Gyap Sa Chi Da Gi Chi Ye Ji Pe So Nam Ki Rola Benche San Ye Do Para Sho So Ye Cho Na Ma Chan Chu Ba Du Da Ni Gyao Se Chi Da Gi Jin Yen Ji Pe So Nam Ki Rola Benche San Ye Do Para Sho
Yeah. 건조 비디치야 가디지는 고조이나. 건조 비디치야 가디지는 고조이나.
Microphone.
아니 이제 그래. 건조 비디치야 가디지는 고조이나.
You want to take it?
건조 니마 당보래 돼. 가디는 당보라고 돼요. 나 당보 가디지.
It's like is curious that how long have you been studying Buddhism? When did you start becoming a Buddhist or becoming yourself as a Buddhist practitioner? Since when? So he wanted to know each and everyone individually.
Well, I knew about it when I was in college in the 70s, but I guess you could say that I started studying sometime in the 90s. I don't know exactly when. I don't remember. Sometime in the 90s.
그런데 코란 주제가 몇 년에 그게 들은 노래에 가면 때 전화를 주셔야 되는 믹스에 나와서 믹스 개개면서 무주 거란 시동 무주 거란이 나오고 차고 그래서 로 같은 거를 쉬는 거 무주 거란이 있어.
Yeah.
I started practicing Zen and studying Buddhism about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And then I took refuge with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, refuge in Bodhisattva vows 2 years ago. And I'm studying the preliminary practices.
그러면은 근데 무슨 생기 연례셔가 봐.
네.
나면 이 뭐지 하장기 그 아까잖아 하장
네.
가위 연례셔 디자인을 뭐라
네.
이게 되나야 연례 제제는 다 로종을 쓰는데도 그래서 왜나 저리야 아마지 이제 로니스 소소로 근데 전에 좀 시작했다 자주스로 좀 시작했는데 좀 소소
네.
I started studying in 2001, in the spring or the summer, after meeting Gankar Tulku Rinpoche.
이건 있어야지 이건 지네
ane,
你到今年你的记得，对吧？就两个外人去参加，的确有什么的。
ane,
About the same, 2001. But I was always interested in Buddhism. My aunt worked for the British government and bought, when I was 7 or 8 years old, bought a magazine about Tibet, and it had a picture of the Dalai Lama in it and the stories of Tibet. And then by the time I was 25 or 26, I found a Buddha and some tanka paintings, not the printed ones, not the tankas. But we didn't really start actually studying Buddhism until we met Gankatuku.
其他的说但那年我下边是的不能遇到这里是快，遇到这因为这空的了呢，老你嘛，以及解放不了，比个胸小的多，胸小可能给那个什么的，阿苏做外贸过来是解放的嘛，就这呢，三年那年的这嘛，这样我全部这呢，就说的哪些这样的。 对面的呢，对面的是因素的，你真的毕竟他，过去的毕竟他哪些呀，就三年那年前了，他轮你三个在路对吧呢，哪些前，对吧？对对说是呢，但我想的哪些前，他说哪个颜色是他过出来了的，你到这一年呢都是过这边说的。Mr. Michael.
So what were the questions again?
When did you start
When
studying?
did I start?
Yeah.
So, Gen was in charge of the teaching in LA. And Anthony and him needed a ride to the airport. And so Buddhism, Christianity, whatever. Okay. And I'm driving and Gen is here and Anthony's in back. And Gen turns to me and he says, "You come, you help." And I said, "No, I'm taking you to the airport." And he said it again. And then Anthony said, "No, he wants you to come to LA. He's in charge of the stage." So His Holiness had got me credentials. What?
When was this?
Whenever Gen was in charge of LA. I'd never been, 2 days later, I met the Dalai Lama, whatever. So
2004
like,
or 5.
2004.
Was it? No, 2001, wasn't it? Anyway, for the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there was a meeting between the UNPO and the UN in Geneva. And the Dalai Lama got me credentials to attend that meeting without meeting me. And so when Gen asked me to help, I thought, oh, I got to say yes, And I don't know. That's how I started. I don't know that I'm a good student now. That's what I want to say. That's what I never taught. Could I say one other thing? It was in Pasadena, California.
Oh.
Very, very rich teaching, okay? And I listened to the Dalai Lama for the first time in...
Heart Sutra, probably.
What?
Heart Sutra teaching, right?
Heart.
I was there too.
Oh, yeah.
Pasadena, yeah.
And then, yeah. So it was really a strong teaching. And I was like, Thupten Jinpa was a translator.
Yeah.
And I had to run the mic and make sure that so I'd listen to him on... Yeah, it was really good.
Whenever he's always give the teachings in LA, the Pasadena
LA was the
Yeah,
next.
stadium is always there. So that's the place where he normally gives the teachings. I remember 3-4 times of receiving teachings in that.
In that opera
Yeah.
house. It's in
It's
this
a huge.
huge opera house, but the acoustic,
That's
the sound is, you can talk without microphone.
그럼 이게 따스tin 나라스야 군대 소리나 이제 이게 이거 시대가 준비해 군대네 근데 세미는 거에 군대 남는 이게
안 해.
이나 이게 대해서요.
But I'm still saying I'm not a very good student. Okay, serious. Don't look at me. Look at me. Look at me. No. Try. Thank you.
어디를 나머지 이제 3월로 당아서 배지 나 고지 고글로네 신에 배서 다야라고 돼. 뭐네 진짜는 고주야 돼. 고지 고글로네 고주이스. 고지 고들로라야 페네 실레. 고지 고글로네 안에 배서 다야래도 고주가 이제서가서 다시 배서 다야고 두주라고도 배지 로징이 모두 찍버리셨어. 또 좋지야라.
Let me introduce myself and when I became introduce myself. Yeah.
Can you speak into the mic? It's really.
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry, it was like.
as when we always think that we're police, but that doesn't happen automatically, as you all know. And I came to India from Tibet in 1999, and since then I started studying Dharma, and I would safely say that I became a Buddhist myself, studying Buddha Dharmas since 1999, after I came to India.
근데 이제 다 단단히 지당기 시딩디 다 낭초를 다 되어라 따르고라 또다 된 것도 망자 납자라고 지냐냐 레샤스 시딩.
So now this particular text that we're dealing with, our discussion, which is related to friend by Nagarjuna, is mostly to advise. It is advice for all of us, and which is also very suitable for all of us as a lay practitioner. It's this particular letter in the form of advice. It is advice in the form of letter to his friend, who is a king. Obviously, it's not a ordinary member, so he's a lay person. So this is something that is suitable for us, and it's mostly a very practical advice that is given.
인데서도 잠발이야 아주디 군등기 아주 예치리 잠발이야 안에 낭초기 떡줍스 직체 안 낭초기 체릭스 직체 낭초기 납차 어디데스 체난도 같은데 인데 잠발이야 다 체난바 베디지 가서래 가서래 낭초를 로망도 장화 제자기지 손자니 다 오늘 전에서는 떠들자보다 들려가나 야지 저거야래 저때 단단하죠 뒤가나 달랍자되면 흉지 되지 마티 되레스.
So normally his holiness, when he talked about Buddhism, he always made the divisions, the three principal divisions of Buddhism. In other words, Buddha Dharma. One is to the category of Buddhist science, and another one is about Buddhist philosophy, and then Buddhist practice over the last. And since all of you have become a Buddhist and become a Buddhist practitioner for a very long time, we should, instead of discussing on Buddhist science, we should discuss on Buddhist philosophy, other Buddhist philosophy, or Buddhist practice. So it is therefore, according to this text, it is mostly a practical, practice that it advises us. So therefore, we are taking our time to engage in discussions of this particular text.
我这里是的，但样子的怕，的怕查什么哪里样子去，样子新的公园找不到这个，别在找不到这地库的，样子还是的，东北一点样个这，别在这对对找不到这地库的，样子这了什么大就个是。
So in this particular text, it's mostly an advice and day-to-day practice. It doesn't discuss much about philosophical standpoint of emptiness and so forth. It mentioned a little bit, but there's not much in-depth teachings on the teachings of emptiness. However, once we complete our discussions on this particular text, we will be then the next probably we will go through the teachings on shamatha or kamabhati. Almost probably we will go through the short discussions on emptiness. So whichever is need to be done. So after we complete these discussions, then we will talk about that. Once we are done with this letter to the friend, I'm sorry.
아니, 지지 니슈 조선들이 마다 카드를 쉬시는 되더라. 지지 니슈 조선들이
So
마시고
you're on the verse 23. Verse 23 is let's go to this.
다디 되번나네 풍어지와 때 개배원도 김비 제자를 송 제다 방기 대이 작조기 과외조를 직진되다 징스
So let's say verse 20, verse 22 is essentially objects bring ruinations, the Lord of the Trinity, and say that they are like that the keep
Sweet on the outside.
that the keeper for street on the outside, bitter within, abandon them by their own chance. Worldly people are bound in the prison of reoccurring samsara.
다 나랑 쪽에 단다 배데 튼던이야 나랑 쪽에 디지 유학의 지도 튼일 지야기 아니 다 가서 그래 롱주 니니도 다 대절라서 봐도 지 차심기사기 릭 탐지 아니 가서 그래서 포화서도 다랑이 가서 그래 동해를 자기 동해버려 지기 랑이를 두부 단계라고 돼 아니 소소기 딱바로 되니 지야기 아니 대배 되연도서 그봐 대배 되연도서 레스르와 대속이 아니 소소 풍화지 그래서도 소소지 가서 그래 약보지게 된다라도 되니 제벌도 되도 소소바 둘러봐 자그레스
So what it talks about here is now all these sensory objects bring relation, which means our desired object. That is what is meant by the sensory objects. And regardless of how much name, fame, or wealth, resources that one may have, all of this will not bring us the happiness that we seek. Because when we talk about seeking happiness, we're talking about the ultimate state of happiness. We're not talking about the limited happiness. But because of our too much attached having too much attachment towards our desired object, we are unable to find the happiness that we seek. And we're always running after this desired object. And that always bring a relation. That's what we mean.
근데 이제 대버디 말한도 대베도 연데 아니 빼잡지 차셔는 산지 좀 된데 빼 가와라 차셔라나 신도 아니 김버스기 되는가 김버스기 되게 제부라 되게 제부들라 봐 빼샤는 신도 김베 제부세데 아니 지 치료가 빠빠데 베지서도 나무를 be지면도 치신상나 나네 봤을 지 빠빠데 봐지 나무를 지 신부터 보지 아니 대대 지 나무도 삼상가도 사차에 있는데 나로기 그지 신도 되게 거기 지금 뉴버터 보지 그래서 땡님 받체네 아니게 코베나나 말레서나나 아니 지 소자야다 나서다야다 지 들이지기 있어와 제가 거기 나무들은 칼라시 뭐여버들 남네 대사도 좀 발라야 대세차에 대 제부들 같은 거는 저거는 나다 다야 되는 소범에 되어 연구여와 대나싱아라서 대버데 통보파 통도 콜라야 지 대박이 지 그소리 대외 손아질리게 요르도 코 롱제베 제부들이야 아니 수술로 등에 지야지 근데 요거 승부했어.
Now what Buddha has given the example, the way we are attached, the way we have a strong attachment towards our desired object. It's like someone who is addicted to consume kimpa fruit, the fruit of kimpa fruit here it says. So in the Seer translation it says sweet on the outside, bitter within. But in the original text itself, it doesn't say bitter within. It says it creates a problem or it ruins your health later on. That's what it meant. It says bitter within, I don't know how they call it, but maybe there's some commentary it might have it. But in the text itself, it doesn't say bitter within. But however, it indicates that when you take a bite of this kimpa fruit, the surface or the outer layer of this kimpa fruit must be very, very delightful to eat. However, once you have consumed this fruit, and it will ruin within. It will ruin your health, in other words. So this is how sensory objects to bring about ruination of us if you have too much attachment towards our sensory objects or the desired objects. At the first glance, you may think this is something that's very desirable, it's going to help me. But however, it's not so. It will be other way around. You're not really getting a satisfaction, happiness, but rather it will ruin. It will bring a ruination.
어딘데 인디 좀 발라야 김베 제대로 송체로 아니 진짜 인디 좀 발라야 김베 제보다 대바데 아니 대베 연대 대다 빵거레스 대다 빵키스 대다 밥빵쇼스 가서래 대려야 다 대소 나자도 대베 연대도 좀 밥빵스 대라 착밥빵고 요래 양 단단 가라도 지 되게 밥 샤는 가라도 쳐도 그 말와 이나야 대라 착밥도 빵고 요래 착밥이 빵고 요래 모두 저기 당아 대베 연대도 지부 지금 매스네 빵기 인생에 안에 계속 지간 된도 많이 봐 대비나 안에 연구 말아 밑에게 연구 말아 소소가 되니 지구로 근데 이 될래야 차바데 밥방쇼스여와 계시 마방나 아니 대마방나 가르치게 돼서나 아니 대 작다다 집어레스 작다다 집어 전에 가르치게 돼서나 아니 소소 코르베 나라마 코바 여자라 되나라마 아니 심진도 좀 대마방게 심진되다 안에 되게 되외도 연되게 코메게 찡되지 야 타러 주고 말해서 코베나라 야대 그래서 자로게 찡번하신 코베나라 야대네 코야 타러 주고 말해서.
So therefore it says abandon attachment with regard to sensory object. What that means? Abandon them. by their iron chains, worldly people are bound in the prison of recurring samsara. So here again, one should not misunderstood when we talk about abandoning them. We're not saying that you cannot eat, you cannot wear clothes, and you cannot have shelter and so forth. That is, however, not so. It's not that is what it is suggested here. We, as a initial practitioner, ordinary beings, suddenly we need to eat, we need to drink, we need shelter, we need clothing and so forth. But those are the necessities for us. But what it is, what that really means, abandon them. What is meant by abandoning them is to abandon attachment towards them. In other words, one should not have attachment towards them. Although that those are necessities, but one should not have attachment towards them. If one is unable to separate yourself from this attachment, then it is like an iron chains that will bind us within this unenlightened existence, and which prevents us from achieving ultimate happiness, because it always binds us within this unenlightened existence, which is this samsara, who will continue to revolve within this samsaric existence.
What in the kogi, when a channel covenant, Kobala ya tham majuke de tanzi mariba de redo ina ya tanda tanzi mariba le thabaji chingdegi de wadi ngaranzo ta debe dunya la chabas na mero rwa te redo te iya de countries na ngaranzo samada chelo lomye chene ta gyuring bu tugu yore ta tanzi mariba de ane kasogre ngaranzo ge ta kasogre dungi kisage tsawa 이 이번에 나랑도가 하고기 다 롬녀의 전에 지 가서 그래. 교중기 셰럽잡지 가라 간좀 유리게요래. 다 잠니지 잔주고 쓰면 고무고야 되는 나랑도 또 생기요래. 개베신이 가리나 되네 가라 간좀 나와라 되요래. 다 나랑도게 디게도 나랑도게 라레 자원이네 지도금이다. 라레 치마도야 돼 가와투 그래서는 나랑도게 주주 매바들라 두고도 주주 자원이 매바들라 다 주주 매바들 수수 그래서는 아는 주주디 나라도 망자 되베도 용기 직딘 되기 아니 자와 짱짱 교도니 대장장 개침보지 파족이 땡게 되어 줘야 될래야 개충중지지 데데데데 단다 될래장장 고고데데 좀 발라 나라도 가서 그래 가사게 담에 또베 가사 담에서 나타 담에 또베 셰럽도 좀 공고야도 좀 알아서 신기 요래 공고레 시기 요르도 이나야한테 두즈멜레데 알아서 되베 되요나야 차바티기 원게 아니 지도금이다.
So as we have been studying Buddha Dharma for quite some time now, and we all know that our root cause of taking rebirth within this cyclic existence is our self-grasping mind. And this self-grasping mind gives rise to a very strong attachment towards sensory object or five desired object. Even though that we have gone through those teachings, we have received numerous teachings of love, compassion, bodhicitta, perfect view of emptiness, and so forth. It is because of our great, kind teachers, but we are unable to break the chain of this attachment up until now. As I mentioned earlier, even though that we may have we have practiced Buddha for a very long time, but we are unable to get the change. Why this is happening? Because we're not having adequate time to practice. But why we are not having adequate time to practice is we are all running after sensory object. And that's why, even though that we have received the teachings and we know how important it is for all of us to practice and meditate on love, compassion, bodhicitta, perfect view, emptiness, and so forth, it is because of our attachment towards five desire object or the sensory object. We're not having adequate time to practice. So by looking at that, with this understanding, how this sensory object, having a attachment towards sensory object, binds us within this unenlightened existence.
Today in the Zumbalaya, Naranzogi Takazore, Tadak, that to do Mizilhama de Atinalaya, Katziji, Yamle Chitu Yuna. They Kiginchi da Kiduchi Tunji, and they send it to so. And a Kiginchi da Kiduchi mini Yoruspella, and then it's a Yaga to the Mima Linga Danga to his right, Linga Danga to the Zambalaya. And a Kiduti again, a Miss Shenda, some Linga Danga to those. And a gang and ye Linga Dangatos, Lagisara. And a gang Dangani Lega Sama Sana to read us, Lega Sama Patsana Motoji and Womardas, Linga Lega Sama Sana to read is Lagiris. Today in the Animaji. Ken Kuni Shobanga origin and a lega to do Zambalaya. And a Miji Tone Shini and the Pumudi, the mission that the Gana came with Sara. Gigantigi Paki Karaki to Yoris La Yusara. Gidudigi Paki the Shinga Shashan, you made the lega somewhat san Lingatanga to Yoris Laris. Or the Destin in Garanzogi, lega somewhat sani, the Chik Sani Chi is at the Garanzo Pedi Kasure.
So here now, there's also one thing that is, as I mentioned earlier, that we have is due to our too much attachment to our sensory objects, we are not giving much time for our practice. That's one thing. And then another thing is that even though that we may have a time, but we tend to procrastinate. We have a tendency of procrastinating our practice and keep procrastinating. And once I finish this, once I'm done this, and I will be practicing. Once I do my things, whatever that's important activities that one may has to undertake. So you are just waiting until you finish that, and this is what is happening with us. So therefore, with this regard, I would like to share a little, short story about one of the teacher and student in Tibet. The student actually saw a lot of people actually going for picnics, and they're just going there to enjoy and meeting their friends and colleagues and their acquaintances and so forth. He wanted to go there, but then teacher said, let's finish all the necessary job or the work that we have to do. Once we finish, then we will go there. He said that. But then your work will never done. They just come one after another and they couldn't go to picnic at all. And then finally, there was they came across with, they were going somewhere for their work, and then they, at the on the way they have found someone, there was someone whose dead body is ready to be cremated on the cremation ground. And then the student then told his teacher by saying that, well, now this person has done all his job, finished his work. Now he's going to enjoy a picnic. So this is how we are. If we keep waiting for our job to be done to practice, and this will what will happen to us one day.
接着被那个人给到过去了查查呢他可是我的去小个都天的休息身边那个都对其他也是能起来没多你的怎么两个人做给他可是我的这个是他个人做参谋老给去两年前个投资已经没这段呢也不怎么钱了呢安尼可是我的去也不定这几的钱呢这叔叔个两年没钱了呢安尼三年个电报可能是吧这当三年电报参谋了嘛差不多俺那个的俺就老好这两年前当今的线这钱他早晚年嘛线那他了他这线呢等到这两年去了只要嘛穷呢安尼投资都做什么呢安尼别嘛是碰不是吧穷全部休息了吧
So now it is time for all of us to really find a time to practice. And we can find. It is not that we are not getting time at all, but we make an excuse by saying, "Oh, I wanted to practice, but I don't have time." But we have plenty of time. We're more letting ourselves chasing after sensory object rather than practice. So if we really put an effort to find a time, we definitely find the time to practice. Because now, as we discussed earlier, that we have received teachings, numerous teachings from the great teachers up until now. And then we just try to look at ourselves and how much practice we have done. Been listening all the time. We have been listening to teaching, and we are very keen to listen to the teaching. But how much practice we have done, and how much change we have brought in our transformation we may have, or how much transformation, or how much improvement that we may have done. If you look at yourself, and we haven't changed much. In my own experience, although we have received numerous teachings. So now, whatever the time that we have, the lifespan that we have from now until our ultimate journey, we should think of really to practice and bring about little change in ourselves.
我的说的他兄弟那有人的可能那天给面对对我让做的这别的设置我这个他这人道是不去人道咋人道被全部咋全部听这这个他这那这这不叫这不是呢安尼他的了也怕设的有的听这个可是我的设的有的听这个怕给家大怕被嘛是狂当全部人当全部修就怕是 다들 세차네 안에 대나라야 괜히 교사체네 된남주 와 잘라 짜침부데 야야 보체네 저 칼라도 로사 맞아요제 괜히 로사체 샤샤이나 미신다 지금 따위 이메이나 다 다가르면 미국 버스기로 와 미국보다데 잘라데 짜침부데 막에 괜히 로사체 샤샤 대 빼마스 구버로 와스 데들라기로 와스 다 나란 쪽에 단다게 수수부문의 대조가 밀려 야보지 톡 달라마게 배신인단지 아니 최치야 냠레치야게 지 튕기다 마서나 차상 상대와데 아니 대기 갑라 양아라주 최냐래 맞체베제 지디디 차와 집불로 고코 대비나 다지기 림보지기 개니 쉬어야 제가 대다 수수 들어비나 단다 수수 베데 텔레 룸 텔레 쿠바 차대 요레스 나랑 저기 야고 삼로다메이나
So whatever the teachings that we may have received, we have listened. And we have all this, the teachings that we are introduced by those great teachers, we must practice. And if we were to waste our time and not really practicing just by listening to the teachings, then that is a big loss for all of us. Wasted a lot of time. So it is just like, think about the human rebirth that we have found at this time. As a human being, we're born as a human beings. It is such a precious rebirth according to Buddhism. This human rebirth is said to be the supreme among all the rebirths of cyclic existence. In this samsaric existence, the human beings are said to be the supreme among all, and it is what we call the precious human rebirth that we have right now. So now this precious human rebirth, if one is unable to utilize, if one is unable to make good use of this human rebirth, then we are just wasting it. Just like someone who made a beautiful container made out of silver or whatever, gold, such a precious material, made out of such a precious, material such as, silver and gold. But then you are not using it in a proper way. If you use this precious container as a trash can, and what is a waste of all this wealth? We're not using it in a proper way. In the same manner, we have such a precious human rebirth. And within this precious human rebirth, not only that we will be able to find ourselves a better rebirth in our next life, but it has a great potential of gaining liberation from samsaric existence. Not only that, also be able to attain complete state of enlightenment as well. So therefore, we should cherish this rebirth that we have right now and make good use of it.
어딘데 이제 제세침부 시발하게 텐데 대원이 유네스 텐조금 멜로 텐데 니 유네 아능에 개본 마체나 서로 나랑기 아니 직초에 보지 마체나 아니 텔레 르버 시메데 텔레 모바 시메도스 알아도 미신다지게 타버지기 지 소소라야 고고 당제래 아니 배샤 먹어지 봐 클류 점도이나 다 배디 수수배 시고지 고고 당서스기로 이난 알아도 그 텐조금 멜로데 봐 동세 담이나 알아도 수수수수로 고고 당야 텔레 라바지 요마레스 아니 텔레 모바 시메도스 비 알아도 계제시에면 교다 성로다면 교도는 쿠버스 라기로 와서 쿠버다 렘바스 알아도 대조금 밀려도 봐 최마 집에 동세 당수나나 쿠버 텔레차 쿠버지 요마레스 제스 좀 시발하게 나랑솔라 kabjusuna labjasina telekin yores.
So it is therefore, Shantikeva has stated in one of his writings by saying that having found such a precious human rebirth, recognizing this precious human rebirth as a supreme rebirth, yet at the same time, if you're not making good use of it, then you're deceiving yourself. And you are really ignoring that the precious rebirth that you have by not using this in a proper way. So this is the advice given by Shantideva by saying that not only that recognizing this human rebirth is something that is precious and important, but also make good use of it.
Today in this number ya in the church
Long.
right
Yeah.
this number ya during 다가 좀 샤다 그런가 tanzania
Yes.
말해
Because it was me.
지버리지 지버징이지 너
So, if you have any questions, we can go ahead and ask questions, please.
What is the method by which sensory objects gain attention? How do they capture human attention? Is it because you can never get to the bottom of a sensory object with the mind? The mind will always see more and more and more, and so it kind of captures this whole attention of the mind. There's something kind of toxic about sensory objects in that they're not just superficial. Once you start looking at them, there's always more and more and more. They're going to be infinite in their complexity, even though we think that they're not. Is that the way that they capture the human mind?
That's it.
배는 거랑도 창라를 장난쇼 되게 비나 호 배대가 제야 강에 쇼트기도 왔어. 봐. 말아도 되게 되려면 배대 창라를 장난쇼게 대체 다른 집부터 동네 로징이지 동네 안에 장난쇼라. 말아도 되게 되려면 더 배대 이 차야래 배대 깨워 고쪽내에 지제 말아도 들려 차대요. 되네 그 되네 돼야지 배가래 가고 그랬어.
So this running after the sensory object, the habit of running after the sensory object doesn't happen in this life. It is from the beginning that's come up until now. We are habituated with this, running after the sensory object. And the habit that we have built is just so deep, very, very deep, the habit that we have built right from the beginningless up until now. So now, getting rid of this desire or attachment regarding the sensory object is not that easy. Not as that easy as we think, not at all. It takes time, takes consistent practice. Because take an example of someone who is alcoholic. That individual is alcoholic. If he become addicted to alcohol in this lifetime, we're not talking about this. It came from beginningless time. If the person may have picked up, having alcohol with their friends, and then finally the person become addicted to alcohol. It is built up in this life, maybe a couple of years ago, but then very hard to stop. Right? Even though that alcoholic person was advised by his physician by saying that you're on the verge of losing your life. but still, the person who is completely alcoholic will not believe that. So this is how much attachment that we have, even in the attachment that we build in this life. But when we speak about having attachment to a sensory object, we build from the beginning of this time. It is so complex. Although we think it's just a desired object, we should get rid of that. It is not that easy, but it is possible that we can get rid of this desire with regard to sensory object.
So is the antidote then to see everything in the nature of suffering? Is that the antidote?
The Yorùbá nyembu Yorùbá nyembu di shazan du me ran yin ba ta te be na nyembu ta nyembu ka ta mu ji nyembu cha wa ba sta nyembu
제 제르부 생기 대베도 영이 님이 저보다 숨숨 그랬어. 돌드네. 대 나랑도 또 접힌 도고 열었어 봐. 제베 명문 봐. 대베도 영데 제베 명문 봐. 가지 지 중나도 고 견 저거 돼야 매 봐. 동네 꾼이고 동네 탐지 콜라데지 영어로 와다. 동네 꾼이고 타고 주지 다네 고 지 템포레지 차로 젠데 내 말아 고 이데 메로 와. 이데메로 어디서 대베도 연del라야 고 친이도 무슨 제베 명호베 동네 아니 동네 군이고 이데메바 어디서 연대시기면
So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa stated that this sensory objects, regardless of how much we have, the desire of whatever, we will never be contented. It is because of our past habit. And then, once you have this uncontented attitude that we have towards sensory object, then that opens the door for all sufferings, which is also become a gateway to our sufferings. Yet at the same time, this cannot be, trusted. It is not a trustworthy. The sensory objects are not trustworthy. So we have to look at these three things, right? That is, not being, you become uncontent, uncontentment in other words, and then door of sufferings, and then not trustworthy. The one is able to look at the sensory objects are in these three things, then it will become a remedy. Though this is not a direct remedy, but it will help you to reduce attachment with regard to sensory objects.
Yeah. Does that apply also to Dharma objects? I mean, statue, rupa, are they also the nature, or is that a different category?
The yearly child, and the lines of Chese was Chese Sangi in 9 years of the day, and I'm now here. Shawat in the Casati, Nimutin were less.
산지에 군인들라 차바지다 군인을 대바치야 되니까 가라 대바는 집으로 와 이나 다디 균노그 두시저보다 되네 제비는 될 차바지로
So now here the thing is that when you have the Dharma object, for instance, let's say about the Buddha's statue.
Yes.
If you look at the Buddha's statue as in the form of wealth, then suddenly you will have attachment towards that, and that creates suffering, right? Instead of that, you have a Buddha statue. If you develop a genuine faith and venerating the Buddha statue as not as an image, but as a Buddha himself, and you're being yourself in the presence of the Buddha, then there's no attachment to it. you develop a genuine faith. But at the same time, then again, as we talked earlier, if you look at this Buddha statue that you have paid, it's quite costly, and you look at this as your wealth in the form of wealth, then suddenly it will create
Okay.
attachment. So this is not right. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, well, I sometimes to me, it seems that giving up attachment is like trying to swim up a waterfall. Because I've done the meditations, I've done the practice as best I could up to this point, maybe improved some, but the attachments are still there. I mean, I've studied to understand that things have no substantial existence. I've tried to recognize that in my thoughts and my feelings and so on. And yet these things arise anyway. And I don't necessarily have to intentionally look at an object for it to arise in my thinking, particularly when I'm practicing. When I'm practicing, it's easy to get very distracted by just about everything. It can overwhelm your practice so that you cannot do your practice effectively anymore. So it seems sometimes like it's, I don't want to say insurmountable, but it's huge. It's just huge to try to swim up that waterfall.
Okay. The way the earlier much trouble by the touching chamber, that she was on your letter, the common chamber in the way shooting chamber now, so the cake of the research in a damage of such men who was the village and come cabinet, so king never be a Padachi. Chunabra Jinimandova, one year members of something was take up the Devaraji, there is 600 and the solution for the in a dia, Koji, Dine, that Tini Kovia, that Tunzamia, Tini Tunzava, Tini Antilam Zankoro, Sing if you get Chawa de Ladia, the better Chawa de Ladia. Chengani ma cha we ken sam sam de ta go ma de ji ko ji gyun le sa bi shu de le ya ji cha sam de le di go so de din cha sam de le je ya ka wo shu ye de de yo do de ja da de gyun ne da ji che ji de tin so sam wo ne do ru ka cha go de le de ka wo shi ran do sta be ji zhen qing bu shu ji na ya ge ge ji ji lo de ma de so che sa se de so de
랑서 타제원 디바샤는 이제 가보러와 이나야 나랑도 빼나 나랑도 칼라시 부지 딱바라시 가보시 칼라지 유비나 니마지 암지도지 다 지난 칼라데 마사마도 지난 소볼로 내고도 다 지난 데 칼라데 제만 콜로즈 사레다 발랍 칸이 숨지게 된데 라고용도 아니 소소게 간장선에 텔라야다 땡하는 내고 이사레 제네직 제네 안에 바 뇨로 다네 간장선에 거 당하는 내고들이 제네 칼라데 통된데가 바 산이 맞춰버려 대사는 앞에 사게를 선선하지 데데지 바 용도 왔어 대도 마스나 되게 연된들야 다 땡하라베 내가 잔잔 계기 이사레 땡하라 핑기 여사 말해들 삼노담에는 간장선에 시발로 줘야지 용기 이제 왔어.
As we talked earlier, that it's not just one effort of practice meditating will not really help us to really get rid of this attachment. It really requires a rigorous practice in a very consistent manner in order to help us, in order to become this particular practice as a remedy for one's attachment to a sensory object. Because it really, just one time of practice or meditating on the detachment will not really help us at all. We have to look at this sensory object as also recognize the sensory object having attachment towards us as a, the form of giving rise to suffering. We have to recognize it this way. For instance, if one is very, just to take an example of that, you have a favorite dish that you have been eating almost every day. But suddenly you have some physical problem, health problem. And the physician advises you, well, from now on, henceforth, you should not eat this particular food. Even though how much you like it. But you will refrain from eating that dish, even though that's your favorite, right? In the same manner, when it comes to the desired object or the sensory object that you have too much attachment towards, you should look at it in this way. If I keep myself chasing after the sensory object, this will always give me a problem. It will open the door for all this samsaric problematic situation that will drag me to the situation of samsara, suffering.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So
So
let's
the
stop here.
dedication prayers, page 23 and 24, and continue with auspicious tradition on page 20.
Name Kusera Tenchen Nava Chile Chocho Yapadan Losa Imbe Sasuki Kule Tatu Nekurachi Viva Way Korwe Shikam Pindan Deva Malu Jungwene Chile Sigman Tili Kasoye Shape Site Vadu Nekurachi Omo Chita Chimbadan Kozo Sampo Deyan Dejinte Kela Uyi Jiso Dan Lopchia Kewa Kedan Tamche Raptu Kewa Kamsheki Moa Kata Chocho Kapade Dagi Vesawa Lekunya Sampo Choche Raptu Wahaki
기타마서 기타마서
일단 너무 싫어요.
안에
너무 싫어요. 남들